After turning 60, with a full family, children, and even grandchildren, do you still find yourself enduring behaviors, actions, or attitudes that negatively affect your emotions and precious time? After 60, we often think we should be more tolerant, more understanding, more willing to keep the peace with anyone, even family. But what if that tolerance is actually stealing your joy, your energy, and your remaining precious years? Would you dare to stop compromising with toxicity and fight back fiercely? I'm Vernon, and today I want to share something that might challenge everything you've been taught about family loyalty and respect. There are 5 toxic behaviors that you should never tolerate, even when they come from the people you love most. Stay with me, because what I'll reveal about the one behavior below might completely change how you see those difficult family relationships you've been enduring for years. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle taught us about the concept of philautia, the love of self that isn't selfish, but rather the foundation of all healthy relationships. He understood something that we often forget. You cannot give what you do not have, and you cannot love others well if you don't first love yourself enough to protect your own well-being. Toxic behavior thrives in the soil of our tolerance, and it only stops growing when we stop feeding it with our acceptance. What I'm about to share with you isn't about cutting people out of your life or becoming bitter and isolated. It's about recognizing that after 60, your time and energy are precious resources that deserve protection. It's about understanding that healthy relationships after 60 require healthy boundaries, even with family. To live a wise and fulfilling life after 60, it's crucial to equip yourself with the right knowledge and mindset. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more insights that will help you set the right boundaries, protect your well-being, and enjoy the precious years ahead with peace and purpose. Now, let's dive into the first toxic behavior you should never tolerate, and how recognizing it can empower you to protect your time and emotional well-being. Behavior number 1: the guilt manipulator's web. My own experience made me reflect deeply on the toxic behavior exhibited by my daughter. Every time I wanted to make plans with friends, take a trip, or simply enjoy my retirement, my daughter, Sarah, would call with some crisis, demanding my time, energy, or money. What I didn't realize for years was that these emergencies always seemed to surface whenever I tried to carve out time for myself. When I planned a cruise with my sister, Sarah suddenly needed help with childcare. When I joined a book club, Sarah developed mysterious health problems that required constant check-ins and support. It took her a long time to see the pattern, but once I did, it was clear. Sarah's manipulation wasn't about the emergencies themselves. It was about keeping my focus on her needs, not on my own life and happiness. The Roman Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely said, "No one can hurt you without your permission." The guilt manipulator knows this well and uses it against you, making you feel that it's your moral duty to give in. They subtly pressure you into believing that if you don't sacrifice for them, you're failing as a parent, spouse, or sibling. They know exactly how to leverage your love, your sense of duty, and your desire to be a good family member. They've learned that certain phrases like, "I thought I could count on you," or "if you really cared about me," will almost always elicit the response they want. Research from the Journal of Elder Abuse and Neglect shows that guilt-based manipulation is one of the most common forms of emotional abuse faced by seniors, especially from adult children who've never learned to be independent or cope with life's challenges on their own. The antidote to guilt manipulation is what I call loving detachment. You can love someone deeply, but that doesn't mean you have to be manipulated by them. It means setting healthy boundaries with kindness. Practice saying, "I love you, and I'm not available for that." Notice how the manipulator might escalate when their usual tactics don't work. This escalation isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's actually proof that you're on the right path. You're no longer feeding into their manipulative patterns. This week, take note of one guilt manipulation pattern in your family relationships or others. Simply observe it without trying to fix it just yet. Awareness is the first step toward transformation. Understanding these dynamics is empowering, as it helps you regain control over your time, energy, and peace of mind. But guilt manipulation is just the surface. As we'll see, it often goes hand in hand with another toxic behavior, the need to control every aspect of your choices and autonomy. Behavior number 2. The dismissive controller. Building on what we've just discussed regarding guilt manipulation, there's another behavior that often comes hand in hand: dismissive control. This happens when someone in your life, even someone you love deeply, disregards your thoughts, feelings, and decisions, just because of your age or their own desires. I think of my own experience with Susan, my current partner. At first, it seemed like she was simply helping me with things that were difficult, like managing our social plans or assisting with some personal decisions. But over time, I began to notice that Susan started to dismiss my opinions, often overriding my choices with the belief that she knew what was best. Whether it was about how we spent our weekends or how I handled certain personal matters, her actions started to make me feel as though my voice and preferences didn't matter. Despite recognizing this shift, I found myself tolerating it, thinking it was just her way of showing care or concern. I convinced myself that it was harmless, even though deep down I knew it was gradually eroding the balance of our relationship. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu taught that the sage does not attempt anything very big, and thus achieves greatness. The dismissive controller does the opposite. They attempt to control everything, and, in doing so, diminish both themselves and those they claim to love. Here's the insidious nature of dismissive control. It often masquerades as care and concern. The controller convinces themselves and tries to convince you that they're protecting you, helping you, looking out for your best interests. But beneath this facade lies a fundamental disrespect for your autonomy and competence. Contemporary research from the American Psychological Association reveals that seniors who experience consistent dismissive control from family members or anyone they love show increased rates of depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline, not because they're actually incompetent, but because being treated as incompetent becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. To combat dismissive control, start by setting clear boundaries and expressing how their behavior makes you feel without guilt. Reassert your autonomy by taking control over decisions that affect you. If needed, seek support from a counselor to help reinforce healthy boundaries and protect your independence while maintaining respect in the relationship. You don't need to justify your choices to people who've already decided you're not capable of making them. Your age is not an invitation for others to override your autonomy. Have you experienced someone dismissing your autonomy or trying to control your decisions? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We can discuss how to reclaim our independence and set healthy boundaries. Behavior number 3. The constant victim who refuses accountability. Now we reach what I consider one of the most exhausting toxic behaviors after 60, precisely because it masquerades as vulnerability and need. Let me reflect on what we've seen so far. The guilt manipulation that uses your love against you, and the dismissive control that treats your autonomy as negotiable. Both of these create the perfect conditions for our third toxic behavior, the constant victim who refuses all accountability. A powerful example of learning to handle this behavior comes from someone you might not expect. Warren Buffett, now 94, one of the world's most successful investors. In recent interviews, Buffett has spoken candidly about how he had to establish firm boundaries with family members and business associates who constantly presented themselves as victims of circumstances, never taking responsibility for their choices or outcomes. Buffett shared how, particularly after turning 60, he realized that some people in his circle had developed a pattern of always being the victim of bad luck, of other people's decisions, of circumstances beyond their control. He learned that engaging with this constant victimhood was not only unproductive, but actually enabled destructive behavior patterns. His experience demonstrates how even the most patient and generous individuals must learn to protect themselves from those who refuse to take ownership of their lives, instead demanding endless emotional labor from others to validate their victim status. This toxic behavior drains your emotional reserves, with their endless need for sympathy, validation, and rescue. But they never actually want solutions. They want you to feel sorry for them, to fix their problems, to take responsibility for their emotional state, while they remain passive recipients of your care and energy. The constant victim operates through several predictable tactics. They present every setback as a catastrophe that happened to them, rather than acknowledging any role they played. They dismiss all practical solutions with reasons why nothing will work. They create drama around minor issues to maintain attention and sympathy. When you try to step back, they escalate their victimhood, suggesting that your boundary setting proves how alone and unsupported they are. You are not responsible for rescuing adults from the consequences of their own choices, regardless of how much they suffer or how much they blame external circumstances. Compassion does not require you to enable helplessness. You can acknowledge their feelings without taking responsibility for fixing their situation. Practice saying, "That sounds really difficult for you. What do you think you might do about it?" Then resist the urge to provide solutions or take on their emotional burden. Setting boundaries with constant victims is essential. Limit your time with them by saying things like, "I can listen for 20 minutes today," or "I care about you, and I'm not available to be your emotional support system." It's important to prioritize your well-being while still showing basic human kindness. But as we'll discover next, energy vampires often escalate to our fourth toxic behavior when their usual tactics stop working. Behavior number 4. The emotional blackmailer. This behavior is what I call emotional blackmail. The practice of using fear, obligation, and guilt to force compliance with their demands. This behavior becomes particularly cruel after 60 because it exploits our deepest fears about aging, abandonment, and family legacy. My friend Patricia, a 72-year-old widow, often faced emotional blackmail from her adult son David. Whenever she made decisions he disapproved of, such as selling her large home to move into a smaller apartment or starting to date again after mourning, her husband David would respond by threatening to cut off access to the grandchildren. The emotional blackmailer understands your deepest attachments and uses them as leverage. They know that after 60, relationships with grandchildren, family traditions, and the legacy of family unity matter deeply to you. They weaponize these sacred connections to force your compliance with their wishes. The Persian poet Hafez wrote, "Fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions." Emotional blackmailers keep you living in that cheap room of fear. Fear of losing relationships, fear of being alone, fear of family conflict, fear of being seen as the difficult one. This becomes particularly toxic after 60, because seniors often feel they have limited time left to repair relationships and may capitulate to avoid conflict in their remaining years. Studies from the National Center on Elder Abuse highlight that emotional blackmail from family members is a major factor contributing to depression and anxiety in seniors. This behavior often leads to what researchers refer to as hostage syndrome, where the victim becomes so preoccupied with avoiding the blackmailer's consequences that they lose sight of their own needs and values. You must be willing to let the blackmailer follow through on their threats. This sounds terrifying, but here's the truth. Most emotional blackmailers are bluffing, and even when they're not, the temporary pain of their withdrawal is less damaging than a lifetime of being controlled by fear. Practice saying, "I'm sorry you feel that way, but my decision stands." Then, prepare yourself emotionally for their escalation, knowing that it's evidence of their own emotional immaturity, not your failure. Remember, anyone who would use your love for them as a weapon against you is not someone whose approval you should seek. Real love doesn't come with threats attached. If you or someone you know is dealing with emotional blackmail in their relationships, don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with friends or family who might benefit from understanding these toxic behaviors and how to protect themselves. It's time to break free from manipulation and reclaim your peace. This connects directly to our final toxic behavior. What happens when blackmail fails and the toxic person decides to demolish all boundaries entirely? Behavior number 5, the disrespectful boundary crusher. As we reach our final toxic behavior, it's important to understand how everything we've talked about ties together. When guilt manipulation, controlling behavior, and emotional blackmail don't work, toxic family members or your lover often resort to the worst tactic, completely ignoring your boundaries. This is the behavior that says, "I don't care what you want or need, I'll do whatever I choose, whenever I choose, however I choose." It's the family member who shows up uninvited and won't leave, the one who shares your private information even after you've asked them not to, or the person who disregards your no as if it doesn't matter. What makes this especially harmful after 60 is that you've spent many years building your life, setting your preferences, and earning the right to live by your own values. The boundary crusher doesn't respect any of that. They think your time, privacy, and choices don't matter if they want something. This behavior often gets worse as you age, because some family members may see your vulnerability as an opportunity to control your life. They might justify it by saying they're taking care of you, or making decisions for you because they think you're not capable anymore. To protect yourself, develop a fortress mentality. This means setting up boundaries, both physical, like locks or security systems, and communication, like blocking numbers or limiting what you share. It also means distancing yourself from those who don't respect you. Practice saying, "That doesn't work for me," and stand firm. If needed, change your locks or leave family gatherings early. Remember, a boundary without action is just a suggestion. The truth is, people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, even if they don't fully understand them. But if someone constantly crosses your boundaries, they don't love you, they want to control you. Think about which of these behaviors you're currently tolerating in your family. You don't need to solve it all at once, but it's time to stop thinking that these toxic behaviors will change with more patience. Conclusion: we've journeyed through 5 toxic behaviors that you should never tolerate after 60. The guilt manipulator who uses your love against you, the dismissive controller who treats your autonomy as negotiable, the constant victim who refuses accountability while demanding endless emotional rescue, the emotional blackmailer who holds your relationships hostage, and the boundary crusher who refuses to respect your right to self-determination. But here's what I want you to understand above all. Tolerating toxic behavior doesn't make you a good person, a loving family member, or a wise elder. It makes you an enabler of dysfunction. The ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Your new beginning, your liberation from toxic family dynamics, must start with ending your tolerance of behavior that diminishes your dignity, steals your energy, and poisons your remaining years. Love doesn't require you to be a doormat. Wisdom doesn't mean tolerating abuse. And keeping the peace isn't worth sacrificing your peace of mind. This week, Choose one of these 5 toxic behaviors you've been tolerating and take one concrete step to address it. Maybe it's refusing to rescue the family victim from their latest crisis. Maybe it's hanging up the phone when the guilt manipulation starts. Maybe it's saying no to a controlling demand without justifying your decision. Maybe it's simply recognizing that what you've been calling family loyalty is actually enabling dysfunction. For more insights on how to set healthy boundaries and protect your peace, subscribe my channel and hit the notification bell. Hit the like, comment, and share this video to help others who might need these tips in their lives too. Thank you and hope you continue to maintain the clarity and wisdom that come with age.